Hello. Today I'm going to do some plant maintenance for my orchids. I have maybe 20 orchids to go through. My plan is to repot them, check for like any dead roots, and then just check them back in, I guess. I do have a few that are in these nursery plastic pots that I'm going to repot into like bigger ones now that I have the actual like ones that fit in here. So, and I'm doing this because I've had these orchids for maybe 8 to 9 months now, and I converted them to semi-hydro. So it's just been a while, and the roots, you can see the roots are rooting. So I just wanted to check to make sure there wasn't, you know, anything weird going on in there. Okay. I wanted to start with this one first because I think it has the most roots growing out like this. This one, I don't know if you can see it. It's a Phalaenopsis Yu-Yang Little Peacock. So most of the ones, most of the orchids I have are like named varieties. I find that they are a little bit more sensitive to humidity, which is why I ended up doing semi-hydro in the first place. I'm also going to rinse out all these reservoirs in the bottom. This one has a root growing, 2 roots growing out. Oh, you can also see another one trying to come out. There it goes. This one. No spike though. No flower spike in the last year that I've had it. You can see there's a lot of roots though. I started putting these little pebbles on the top because I heard that sometimes it gets really dry, like the top layer of semi-hydro, whatever material you use will dry it out. But because I put these orchids in the greenhouse, my greenhouse shelf, I feel like it's not really that necessary. So I'm just gonna not use these pebbles anymore. Kind of don't really do anything. So the reason I started doing semi-hydro is because I live in Southern California and the humidity is just way too low for most orchids. I feel like the orchids only really started to look like this and to get really healthy roots is when I got my greenhouse shelf. And that basically means it has like 70 to 80% humidity. The temperature is around 75 degrees all the time. I have grow lights, which are on 12 hours a day. Before I killed off a lot of different orchids, regular orchids, like no ID ones, and the expensive ones that I've bought that are named varieties. So eventually I was like, there has to be I'm doing something wrong, essentially. I just decided, let me try and give them the best living situation I could, which requires a greenhouse. If I didn't see any dead roots, I probably wouldn't even bother taking this out, but I do see some, and I know that when I first potted this, there was some that was dying. There is this one root right here that I think it was going to die, and then actually started growing. So it's a little bit soft, like right here. I don't know if you can see. So I don't want to like snap it off. Let's see, there's this dead one right here, which I didn't cut off. You can see that it actually grew a new root right there. But the dead part is still inside the pot. So I'm just gonna cut this part off. Oh my God, this is gonna take forever. It's been like 10 minutes and I haven't even done one one orchid yet. This is probably my fault. I probably should have repotted this a long time ago before it started sticking to the pot. You're just here to get snacks? Okay. Okay, there it goes. Oh. Kind of see the roots. And I do see some kind of brown ones, dried up ones. I'm gonna take care of those. But I did grow a lot of roots since I got it. One is part of it. This. And honestly, everything else seems okay. You can see the older roots are in the middle. And then everything else is just growing around it. This one root is just hanging by a thread. That's why a lot of orchid growers will say, be conservative and don't cut everything that might look dead. Actually, this root is growing from, I don't know if you can see, this root is growing from that stem too. And I think that root decided, if I die here, I'm just gonna grow a new one here. Same thing here, here's like another example. So this root looked like it was going to, well, it did die right here, but it grew out another root from this area. Actually, two roots. So it helps to tap the pot, get all the rocks down there. So I'm hoping I don't have to do this for another year or two. I'm just gonna leave it in here. Okay, I think that's about it for this one. There are some gaps in here, but once I put in the outer pot with the reservoir and inside of the greenhouse, the humidity kind of just like wicks up. So hopefully these parts won't get too dry from not touching the pumice. This one is actually has its own inner pot as a self-watering, but it's not a clear one, so I use these clear ones and I stick them in this one. Like that. That was just one and it took 30 minutes, so hopefully the other ones go a little bit easier. This cup I got from Home Goods, so if you're looking for outer pots with no draining, but you want it to be like sort of clear so you can see inside, try going to like Home Goods or like TJ Maxx, somewhere where they have like discount like beverage cups, plastic cups, and some of them are cute. So, okay, this one is my Phalaenopsis Sweet Memory. I think this flowered once. It bloomed this year, but the blooms died pretty fast, so got a root coming out. Two roots, I guess. This one on the bottom here. So you would think that orchids grow like slower, but actually if they have like the right environment, they grow pretty fast. Like these ones, these pebbles that I put on top initially are all kind of stuck now because the roots have kind of grown over them. You can see this one. It's kind of like stuck in there. And that was, yeah, like 8 months ago, 9 months ago. So in 1 year, they can grow a lot of roots if they want to. This is also why I'm checking out the roots, because some of them have grown into the water reservoir, which I don't really want because, you know, they're epiphytes. They're meant to breathe through their roots, and they will suffocate in the water. I'm also trying not to squeeze too hard at the stem because I do see 2 flower spikes growing in besides this initial one. This is where the first flower came out. But the other flower spikes haven't really grown, so. Untangling the roots is kind of interesting because you can see, well, I can see, I don't know if you can see. There's one root that grew all the way through, and it came from one of the older roots right here in the middle. And actually, it's kind of dead right here at the top. But then it grew out this big healthy root that came all the way over here. So, okay, I think this one's also pretty done. I forgot to mention, as with all orchids, don't bury the stem too deep, especially with this semi-hydro, it wicks up. Actually, if it's sitting inside too deep, it will also rot. I have had stem rot even in this setup, and it's just because I wasn't paying attention to how much water was going up. So just be careful with that. Okay, for this one, you can see how it's growing very tiny leaves because I almost killed this one. This one is a Bellina alba Wilson. You can see seed grown. I have yet to see the flowers, so I don't know what it looks like. Oh yeah, so if you don't have like a specific pot to put in, I basically just use these plastic liners, the plastic nursery liners they come in. I put like bigger rocks on the bottom so you can like elevate your inside pot so that the water can still be at the bottom, but it doesn't, you know, it's not sitting in the water. But now that I have actual pots that fit, I'm just gonna repot them in these ones. I'm pretty sure this one had no roots at one point, and I was able to save it essentially. It is growing all of these little ones at the top, so hopefully those will sustain the plant. If I cut off this one, I don't think it's going to grow anything else from it. Just going to cut it off from here. That one. Okay, so I'm going to let this one, I potted it like this. So you can see the stem is not actually really inside, it's kind of sitting on top of the rocks. This one is a no ID, but it's also growing a lot of roots. There are some pretty wet looking roots in there. It's not a good sign. Oh, I see a baby stem. I don't know if you can see it right here in between. A little baby stem is trying to come out, I think. I don't think it's a root. It doesn't look like a root. It looks like a stem. We do have a fair amount of dead roots, which is probably why it started growing the roots from the top of the stem. That one's pretty dead. Maybe there wasn't that many. It all kind of looks dead, but actually they all started growing new roots. So I might just leave these all here. This one kind of wants to lean like this over, but that's fine. Just let it lean over. This is literally just a plastic cup that I bought in like, I don't know, a 64 pack from Amazon. They fit pretty decently into these plastic pots. Hello, I'm back. It is now 10:23 at night, as you can probably tell from the lighting. I had to take a break, charge the camera battery, had to run some errands, walk the dogs. So we will be continuing. I'm going to be a little bit more quieter because my boyfriend is sleeping already. This is my phalanoepsis Lyndon mix zebra 707. So I know there's like different numbers. I guess maybe they're seed varieties or genetic varieties of like the mixed zebra. I don't know. Does anybody else find themselves doing plant chores late at night because they just ran out of time? I had to go to the bakery today because you might have seen my golden retriever walking around in the background. His name is Linus. He decided to eat my, well, he didn't eat all of it. He ate like 75% of my bread, my baguette bread that I had cut up to eat with some cheese. So I needed to get a replacement bread. Okay, I'm gonna try soaking this in water for a bit because it's pretty dry. Yeah, I can't get any of these long ones back into the pot, so they're just gonna be growing out like this, I guess. Okay, that one looks like this. The roots are looking pretty green since I added water. This one I also need to change from this one of these pots. Phal Bellina. This one for sure I almost killed. You can tell because they used to have really big leaves and now they're growing smaller leaves. I'm going to leave a tray of water here just so I can dip it in some water on the bottom. See if that makes it easier to get them out. You can see where the stem here, and I basically have to cut off all the dead roots. I think it had just like maybe just these two brown ones here. They both are growing roots, or the roots that were almost dead continue to grow though, because see these two, and this middle one, growing this one here. You can see a root that's trying to grow from here. So it's definitely getting better. It did take like all year, but it's trying. This stem is kind of just hanging out over here, but it's probably safer that way than any deeper than that. This one is a no ID, and I can't remember if I got this from like Trader Joe's or maybe my mom gave me her dying one and I was trying to practice keeping them alive. This one came out pretty easy. You can see it's trying to grow these two out right now, and even here you can see it's like kind of like not a dead root, but it's an old root, but it's growing out a new tip here. Or spike. It's trying to grow in here. I don't know if you can see it. My fat fingers are in the way. otherwise, there's nothing really dead to cut off. It just needs to go into a bigger pot. So hopefully these ones growing will just go inside the pot. Okay, this one's looking like this. This is a Phalanoepsis WS Watermark. I'm guessing this is also seed grown, so they probably crossed these two different species of orchids. I have never seen the bloom so far, so I cannot tell you if it's, if it looks like one parent more than the other. This one actually is growing out of the bottom. I'm trying to see it growing out all the way out. You can also see two little flower stems. I can't remember if these are new or not. They look like they're new. Either that or they just never really grew. How did you guys get into growing orchids? For me, my mom always had orchids growing up. I think she just found the flowers to be pretty. And one day, I don't know, I guess I turned 38 and I was like, oh, I guess I'm into plants now. So I asked her, how does she grow the orchids and how they're supposed to grow? Like, what do you do with the flowers? Then I realized she's not really, I wouldn't say she doesn't like the plants. She kind of just has them. And if they live, they live. And if they die, they die. If you know what I mean. Like, she likes having the plants and she will like water them when she remembers. And she enjoys having them, but she's not really overly attached. And she doesn't really like, she won't like Google like, oh, what's wrong with my plants? How do I save them? She's just like, oh, well, I guess they're just dead. And just buys a new one. And I tend to be the type that's like, if I get into a hobby, I immediately try and figure out how to like do it the best way, I guess. So when I got into orchids, I bought a bunch of orchids. Started off from like grocery store ones, Trader Joe ones. Oh. Then I got into the more expensive specialty orchids. And for whatever reason, they're not as easy as my mom said they were. So that's when I started trying to figure out different growing media, because the sphagnum moss and the bark thing was not working for me. And actually now I'm kind of not over orchids, but I'm kind of over orchids. They're actually really hard, for me at least, to maintain. I have to do a lot of, like my greenhouse shelf, and that took a lot of work and, investment in. And the specialty orchids are actually really, not really expensive, but they're pretty expensive. Like they can go for like $40 to $50 for like one plant. And you can't even like propagate them that well. Like you can use like the cakey paste and stuff, but that's if you get a flower, right? If you don't, like this one hasn't even bloomed. I have ones that have gotten stem rot and I don't know if it's going to grow cakey from like the stem, but if it doesn't, then that's it. It's done, right? So I realized, like, I guess it's the whole, like, does it bring you joy thing, right? And I enjoy the orchids when, they're not dying. But if they're dying, it just makes me feel sad. So now I'm definitely more into African violets. I'm growing a bunch from seed right now. And I'm trying to collect a lot of named varieties that I think have nice flowers. And those are actually really easy to maintain, I will say. This. And so see, I didn't cut this one off initially. It was going to like die, or it looked like it, but again, I didn't want to cut it just in case. And it looks like it's basically grown this whole like root system here. This one is a NOID. You can see it's growing. These are new flower stems that are growing. These two. We do have one big root that's growing out here. There it goes. That took a long time because I had to angle this root out. See all the roots here. I think I see some mealybugs on these. Yeah, it's on the leaves. See those white things? Pretty sure those are mealybugs. Just gonna use 70% alcohol. I don't see any visible ones for now, but I'm gonna have to check all of the orchids. Okay, so this one looks green, but you can see I'm squishing it. It's completely dead up to this part here. And I forgot that I have Deli containers that I bought, or you can save them for like when you have bought soup or something to go, because they fit pretty well into the pot like that. So it's gonna go in like this. And I'm probably going to stop here for tonight and then finish the rest of the orchids tomorrow. I have like 7 more to do, and there's no way I'm gonna do all of it tonight. It is now 11:43, so I will come back tomorrow. Hello, it is now the next morning. I just took a shower, so my hair is kind of wet, but it is what it is. I decided to wear my cute Disney sweater that I got recently because it's actually overcast this morning, which is rare in SoCal. We're just gonna keep going, doing more orchids. Do you need something? No, you can't take my shoe. No. Drop the shoe. Drop the shoe. Give me the shoe. No, it's mine. No, it's mine. No, you can't take the other one. Okay. No. 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 Okay. Okay, and then? What? I fed you already. I fed you. I fed you already. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Why are you like this? Okay, bye. Okay, bye. Okay. You're the loudest water drinker. This is one of my rescue orchids. Until I used to have a really big leaf, and it's starting to finally grow. And sometimes the roots are not bright green. They kind of have a little bit of red in them, which is normal. I think some orchids have that like redness to their leaves. It's just like genetics. So the redness will come out in the roots. This one looks okay. I'm just gonna pot it into a different pot. Actually, it does have these two dead ones that were like the older roots. So I'm gonna cut those. These ones. This one came very, very small. It was like a little baby plant. This is a phalanoepsis Lioulin blue Jenny. So when it first came to me, it had maybe one or two like roots, but it was already like rotting off. So I basically had to just ICU it. So it's finally growing decent roots. You can see some of the growth. I think it's trying to grow something on the stem. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a baby flower stem, but I think it's mostly concentrating on growing roots. This one is my Phal Tetraspis C1. We have some roots growing on the bottom. It had some roots that were starting to die off before I got my greenhouse. I think the humidity was just too low. It was just very, very dry. And most of the orchids did not like that. Okay, it's not too bad. I think I have one or two dead ones in there. The roots are growing from the top at least. So this one I think also has never given me any flowers yet, but it is growing this flower spike. So hopefully soon. So I know people sometimes will ask, do you stick the aerial roots back in the pot or not? I'm just gonna let these hang out here because it'll be a struggle to like fit it in. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer on that. You can if you want. The roots, as long as you don't like keep them perpetually wet, the aerial roots will adapt to getting more moisture. Okay, this one is phalanoepsis KS Vlogold green. I think it's also like a specialty. This one hasn't really grown much. I don't know, maybe if it is this too much sun or what's happening with the leaves. It hasn't really grown any new leaves. It has grown new roots, but otherwise this flower spike hasn't really grown. And then there's like another one in there, and that hasn't really grown either, so not really sure what's happening with it. I also wanted to emphasize that I grow in semi-hydro, but that doesn't mean you have to. If you live in somewhere tropical already and you already have like those nice humidity conditions for the orchids, go ahead and continue growing in like whatever media you already have, like moss or bark, because it's already very wet for you, like you need the orchids to dry out. This works for me because I have a greenhouse, because like I mentioned, in living where I live, it's just super dry. Okay, you can see they're not the healthiest roots. They aren't squishy, but I think these are basically just old roots. I'll leave those on. I basically only cut anything that is definitely dead, and you can see that's dead. I'm also hoping it flowers at some point, because I think the reason I bought this one was because the seller said that the flowers would smell like grapefruit, and like grapefruit is like one of my favorites, so hopefully I can smell it one day. Okay, here's the mini mark. Here. And it is growing from the bottom, And I think it definitely only started growing a lot more roots when I basically let it dry completely in between waterings. And it's starting to grow new flower stems. This one, it tried and it didn't make it. It just died. It dried up slowly. So not really sure, but now it is starting to grow two more. You can kind of see how long they actually grew. I just saw some mealies. Oh, they're like all over my greenhouse then. That is not good. Okay, I'll show you. See right there? Spray it again with my alcohol, 70% alcohol. I don't see any inside of the stem for now, which is where they like to go. You just have to monitor them, check them like every time you water, just have a look at them. You just never know where they're gonna be at, apparently. So you can see how long they got, and they actually grew back up into the pot like this and became aerial roots. But I think I'm just gonna get a bigger pot and try and stick them in the pot instead. I didn't think it was that long, just looking at the pot. But they grew really, really quite a bit. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so something like this, the roots still want to come out anyways, but at least most of it's in the pot now instead of just hanging out. Okay, and then another deli container for this one. And there we go. Okay, this one is a NOID that I think I also almost killed at one point. And I did actually repot this because it's got the newer plastic container, but it is growing out already, so I'm gonna put it into a bigger pot. And you can see it's got a weird wonky flower stem that it's trying to grow out because it grew from under this leaf, but it wants to go through this leaf, which is why this leaf is dying. Do you guys usually listen or watch something as you do your plant chores? I think most people also watch plant chores while doing plant chores. I normally would play music or something in the background, but if I'm filming, I can't do that. I have the new NCT Dream album songs stuck in my head, if anyone follows K-pop. But I am an old K-pop stan. I was around when Big Bang was popular, so you know how old I am then. Although G-Dragon did have a comeback recently. Okay, you can basically see where it had no roots at one point. The stem was just a stem and one sad old root. But eventually it started growing all these new ones. So that's good. Kind of just cut it off. Let that stem come out. Or a flower spike. Otherwise it looks pretty okay. Okay, that one is in there like this. And we are finally at the last one. This one is Phalanoepsis Tetraspis Wilson 214. I think this is the one that's supposed to have like splotchy red spots on it, on the blooms. Hopefully we will see because it actually has a flower spike. There's a mealybug. We will kill that immediately. Not very many roots. I think I almost did kill this one too though, so I don't blame it. I was on Reddit and someone did ask me if it was okay for their aerial roots to have offshoots, and it's possible. Kind of see. And then they're not silvery because they're active roots, but they will in time turn silvery as they grow. Okay, and we are finally done. I'm going to clean this all up and then I have to water everything. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I water the orchids and specifically what I put in the water because it's in semi-hydro, which means it's not going to get any nutrients from like, organic material like bark or anything. So usually I will add liquid probiotics, liquid kelp. I have CalMag, which is calcium, magnesium, and fertilizer, hydroponic fertilizer, which most people would know, focus foliage, because if they do other tropical plants, I'll go ahead and show you how much I put for this much water. This much. And I kind of just mix it up inside. So liquid kelp, I've heard, is supposed to help with growing roots. Calcium and magnesium is included in most of regular fertilizer, but I add a little bit extra for orchids specifically because calcium and magnesium is what helps orchids kind of fight off bacteria. Foliage focus, just a little tiny bit considering this is a decent amount of water. So I will mix that all up in there and just water my orchids. So basically I just water. Well, since this is pretty dry pumice, I kind of just water all around it to get the pumice a little wet. And honestly, that would probably be pretty good. I don't want the water to go all the way up and touch the inner pot. And I'm not going to just let it sit out in my house humidity. It is going in the greenhouse, so even having a little bit of water sit on the bottom, it's going to keep the inside of the pot humid, and that way the roots can kind of absorb the water from kind of the humidity inside. Another example, this one, same thing. Smaller pot, but still essentially to water it the same. So I wanted to just give you guys a quick view of what my greenhouse setup looks like. I put all the orchids back in. You can see some of my orchids. Blooms they're starting to die off already. I guess that's pretty normal. And the bottom shelf is some philodendron starters. So I'm just going to water these like normal. And if you guys saw my last orchid video where I had mealybugs, this one was one of them that I had to repot, and it's growing out a little flower spike or bud from this flower stem. And I do have this one here that also had mealybugs, and it's also growing out a flower spike right there. was trying to do a cute outro with Linus in the background, but he decided to just get up and stick his butt in my face instead. I hope that the video was helpful for some of you guys, or just trying to see, you know, what orchid roots should look like, which one are dead ones, or maybe you just want to do some plant chores at the same time. That's it for the video. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Bonus Linus footage.